Hey, Sub-Tours. My name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I would like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. Occasionally, we'll cover other real estate investing topics, but it will always be something to help you with your real estate investing business. Today is another episode in our Real Investor series, where we feature real investors sharing real stories and actual deals. These guys are investors doing deals all across the country. They don't have any boot camps or courses to sell you, just real tips and strategies and the things that are working today in their businesses and in their markets. They share them all, and these things can work for you too. So pay attention, take lots of notes. My guest today is Joe Sugg. Joe is a real estate investor in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's been investing for over 20 years and has been full-time for those entire 20 years. And Joe focuses on high-dollar real estate. It kind of scares me really listening to him talk about it. We stay in the lower cost stuff myself, but he likes the high dollar stuff, so he's going to talk all about that today. So Joe, welcome to the Sub2 Deal Show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Hey, listen, man, I'm super excited to have you here today. I know you've been a participant in the forum for quite some time, and we certainly appreciate that. So anyway, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started in real estate and what you did before real estate and that sort of thing.
Well, before real estate, I was actually a pastor. That was a long time ago. It feels like a different life. But I realized pretty quickly that, you're not going to make a whole lot of money and you can't make a whole lot of impact if you can't survive. And so I had to look for something different.
Yeah, I agree. You got to make some money, don't you? Yep. So you did the pastoring in the background and everything like that. So what got you actually interested in real estate investing?
I went to a seminar, one of these hotel seminars. I don't know that you've ever seen one of those. and the seminar was focused on real estate. And it was a 2-hour deal, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head the guy's name. It doesn't really matter. He's not around anymore, as most of them aren't. And he got me introduced to the idea that you can make a lot of money in real estate. And I said, you know what? That may be the opportunity I'm looking for to get started. So that was the starting place. And obviously, life's an adventure, and this is all a journey. So let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got my start like a lot of people did. I ordered a late night infomercial course myself, the Carlton Sheets course.
Carlton
Remember
Sheets.
that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how many people I talk to on this show that actually have that course.
Yep. Yeah, I that was one of the ones I bought. It wasn't the first one, but it was the next one.
I noticed that you had said that you attended a Russ Whitney deal. And
that's who it was. Yeah,
that was one that I missed. I mean, I'd seen him on television, but I never actually got out to see one of his events.
Yeah, he was good at what he did.
Yeah. So I know we said you had been investing for over 20 years. Tell me a little about how you got started and what you did when you got started.
So obviously, I didn't have any money. I think that's probably the standard thing based on the conversations I've had. I've had the opportunity to go and coach with guys like yourself and Bill Bronchek and a number of other guys that are solid educators out there. And, when you start talking to people, you realize pretty quick, a lot of people don't have any money. And that's where I started. So, just like everybody else, I started wholesaling. That's where you got to start. So I actually moved from California to Arlington, Texas, because at the time I did some research and that was the number one area in the country for wholesaling. So I went there and decided I got to start someplace. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. So tell us about your business model. I know a lot of people have a certain thing that they do. I mean, when I got started, I was really a transaction engineer. I did pretty much everything. We would rehab, we would retail, we would wholesale and lease auction and the whole bit. But, about 10 years ago, I really focused on, I just narrowed it down to one thing. I said, I'm going to buy Sub2, I'm going to sell financing. But I know everybody does their thing. What's your model? What is it that you
My model is very similar to a financial services model. In 2005, I realized pretty quickly that wholesaling and a lot of the transactions out there were just basically, I owned my own job. It was just transaction to transaction. I was only as good as the last one. It was a lot of work, and it didn't feel like it was getting me where I wanted to go. And so in 2005, I started some financial advising, and took a job with Ameriprise Financial. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not.
Ameriprise Financial used to be American Express Financial, and they're a financial services company. And I took a job with them, and I went in, and one of the first things that they told me was, "We're going to teach you how to retire." Well, I thought that made a lot of sense. Since I was supposed to be teaching people how to retire, I should probably understand this model. And they went into telling me the model was pretty simple. You go out and you gather assets. Okay, gather assets. What does that look like? Well, you go out and you find everybody out there that has anything. If your buddy has $10, go out there and tell him you can manage it. If your sister-in-law has $50, tell them you can manage it. And you go out there and you just gather all the assets you can, because the model is, if you can gather $10 million of assets, then you're going to make about $100,000 a year if you have a 1% wrap on that transaction. And I said, well, okay, that makes some sense. But how does it help the other person? Oh, we're not going to talk about them. That doesn't matter. All we're talking about is how you're going to retire. Well, that whole model didn't work for me in helping people, but it made a lot of sense from my business and understanding my business practice. So I took that and brought it into my real estate. And that's why I love Sub 2, is it allows me to go out and create a wrap transaction that wraps the transaction of the real estate. And I can create that 1%, 2% wrap. And now all I'm doing is gathering assets. And so that's, in a nutshell, why I do it, and what my model is I just want to gather assets. So if it's a $300,000 house, if it's a $3 million house, whatever it is, I'm going to gather that asset. And if I can get a 1% wrap on it, I don't have to make all the money in the world on that transaction. I don't have to hit a home run. I don't have to grind every single dollar away from the seller. I'm able to just stick with my model.
Well, gathering assets is kind of a new term for me, and I'm sure it's a new term for a lot of listeners. Let's break this down a little bit further for those of us who are simple investors. So describe a typical transaction for you, something that you do day in and day out.
So a typical transaction from a Sub 2 perspective would be to go out, you find a deal of somebody that's out there. And in my world, I think we may be talking about this a little bit later, but I really focus heavily on treating the client. In my perspective, I'm looking at them as a client, not a seller, not anybody else. It's somebody I can help. How can I help them in their situation? And if I can help them in their situation, what does that look like? So now what I'm doing from a sales perspective is, instead of being across the table from them, I'm pulling them alongside of me. And as we start looking at that transaction, I start saying, okay, so you have this house and you need to do something with it. You've got this problem. How can we solve the problem? Now, I'm just here to help you solve the problem. I happen to be a professional, and so I know how to solve a lot of problems. And I'm going to tell you something. Some of these situations and some of these things that we can talk about are going to have other solutions that don't have anything to do with me. And then some of them I can help you with. Is that okay if I share both with you? And obviously they say yes. I then go in there, we talk about the transaction. And as we talk about, okay, so here's this house. And if I can put a wrap around the house, just like anything else. So if we're going to buy subject to, in a lot of contracts. So I started in Texas, and when I was in Texas, they actually had in the real estate contract subject to and a blank spot. And so most of the time realtors would use it and they would say, okay, it's subject to the blinds on the wall, subject to the refrigerator stain, subject to whatever. And I remember when I started in the conferences and going to them, they would go, yeah, you can sit there and you can say, well, subject to the Ferrari in the garage, and subject, there was all the crazy stuff. And so they would tell me all the different things. Well, it's just subject to the existing mortgage staying in place. And so here's the formula. I'm not going to negotiate with you. I'm just going to tell you, here's the formula. It's 90% of the appraised value. Because you can tell me how much you think your house is worth, and frankly, history says it's probably high. If I tell you how much your house is worth, what do you think that it's going to be? Most people say that it's going to be low, even though that may or may not be true. And that's their perception. And so, if we can have a third party tell us exactly what this house is worth, then would that make some sense to us? So we can just say 90%, and quite honestly, that's a full price offer. And then I explain that to them. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but if I can wrap that transaction now and buy it at 90%, sell it at 105%, then what that allows me to do is create a spread, not only on the back end, but up front. So I can get 5 to 10% down from my buyer. And then I can turn around and get a 1%, 2% spread on the interest rate from there. And so that's the model in a nutshell.
Okay. So let me see if I've got this down. You deal in the higher dollar stuff. So let's say for a minute that you find a seller, maybe they're getting a divorce, they've lost their job, they can't afford the payments on the house. The house is maybe current, but the house is appraised for $1 million. Then you want to buy that house for $900,000 and sell it for $1,050,000.
Right.
Is that what you're doing?
Yes, sir.
And then so you're getting 10% down from your buyer. Is that a standard for you?
5 to 10, yeah, depending on
Okay. So let me ask you this: in that situation, if the seller actually owed $950,000 and you were willing to pay $900,000, you'd be expecting your seller to write you a check for $50,000.
Well, if we're talking about $950,000, then what we're looking at is a greater spread. And so, for example, if I'm coming in and saying $900,000, and I'm going to tell them specifically what interest rate I'm going to pay them. So I'm not going to be stressed out whether they have a 2-3% number that they have in their mortgage. So I'm not digging in and having to. The struggle that I had, and I think the struggle a lot of new investors have, is you go in and you're talking to somebody and you're asking them a million questions, right? You're asking them all these questions and you're trying, and you genuinely have the right heart. You genuinely are just looking for the right way to fix this problem, and you need the information. But from their perspective, they're looking at it and saying, well, yeah, you're trying to take my house. You're trying to steal something from me. You're trying to take advantage of the situation. You're just a crook. They look at all these different things. So in my world, I go in and say, okay, I tell you what, I generally pay 90%. And in today's market, I'm paying about 5% on the, I'll pay you about 5% on the 900,000. So if you've got a 3%, you're getting a 2% spread as well. So what that does is it also opens up opportunities for me to talk to people who aren't just, they're not just in trouble. So that's kind of the challenge with Sub 2, right? Is you're looking for people who are just in trouble. And what I wanted to do is, broaden my market to people who weren't just in trouble, because you can find people who are in trouble any day, just not every day. That's what our friend, Mr. Bronchek says, right? Any day, not every day. But I wanted to find a way to make that transaction available every day for the right person. And so now I'm able to go in, and by the time I get done with a conversation, I've literally had sellers say, wait, so what you're telling me is I can make money on an ongoing basis on this transaction. The only question I have is, how many times can we do this? If I go out and buy some more houses, will you buy them from me? And then we can do this again. And then they'll also ask me, well, the only other problem I see is how do we prevent people from refinancing? Because I want to keep getting that cash flow, that mailbox money. I like it.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically, even though you're taking over some payments subject to, your model is a good bit different than the typical sub-2 investor.
It's different than just taking straight sub-2 because I'm looking to wrap. All I'm doing is taking the wrap transaction, which is why I like the higher end market as well, is because that allows me to talk to a more sophisticated seller, seller, buyer across the board. Then my buyers are obviously business owners. That's my passion there, is if I can find a business owner that doesn't fit that W-2 model, then what that allows them to do is get into a property. And even though the interest rate may be higher, they're not going to have the same tax hurdles as they would if they were dealing with a W-2 bank transaction.
I got you. Okay. All right. That high
You're
dollar
looking at me through the side of your head.
This is just a little bit different. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but I still like to learn something new. And I got to tell you, moving out here, which I just moved to Colorado in December. I'm dealing for the most part in higher dollar houses that I'm used to. I typically like to stay in Midwestern markets, and I've been investing remotely for about 10 years now. But I, for the most part, like to stay in Midwestern markets where my average price or median price is 150 to maybe 225. So. And out here, the median's a little bit higher than that. So most of the stuff we're looking at on the lower end is 330 to 350. So it's been a little bit of adjustment.
Yeah, it's a different market out here for sure than even like Texas where I was. And so in the Dallas area, you could definitely get some properties that were much more affordable. I remember when I started, I was in Fair Park, and I can remember picking up properties for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, all boarded up, and needles everywhere. And I personally don't enjoy that as much. There's plenty of money to be made there.
Yeah, that's I knew an investor in Oklahoma that his whole marketing niche was low end stuff, and he actually, his bandit signs said, "I buy crack houses." That was his thing. Market for everything. And yeah, for sure. And those guys make a lot of money. We had a guest on Real Investors a couple of months ago, Pam. She's a coaching student of ours, and her thing is mobile homes. And you talk about some low end stuff there, but the returns are pretty amazing.
Oh yeah. Big margins, big margins.
Yeah, and that's what I joked with her on the whole show about, the hassle factor. If you can deal with that, you can get quite a return.
I can't.
There are so many different ways to make money in real estate.
Absolutely. And you and I talked about that a little bit, that, that's probably the biggest challenge I think I dealt with. And when I got started was that I wanted to be kind of the master of all, and you can't. And you got to zero in and focus on what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it works. I mean, if you want to work like a dog, but you get a job and do that any day. And I did that for 12 years. I mean, if it needed rehabbing, we rehabbed it. If it, it was a lease option deal, we can make it work. If it's seller financing, yeah, we can do that too. We can take over payments. But when you really focus, and what you find is you can buy 10 or 12 houses a year and make the same money or more as you did when you bought 30 houses. It's a lot less running around.
Absolutely.
A lot simpler.
Well, it's a higher return on your time investment.
Exactly right. And you can get a lot better at it when that's all you do is focus on one thing. You can really learn a lot about how to do things simpler.
So what do you do with all your extra deals when they come in? And if you get a rehab deal that comes across or whatever, what do you do with it?
I got to tell you, I have not been good at a network where I could give somebody a call and pass that along and do that sort of thing. When I lived in Macon, Georgia. I ran the local RIA, and if something came along that I did not do, like mobile homes, or that was really about all I wouldn't do at the time. I knew a guy that did them, and I'd just call him and say, hey, here's a name and number, take it. I didn't sell anything or try to wholesale it or anything. But, so yeah, I need to get better at that. A lot of times I've just been passing. So yeah, that's just like follow up. I mean, I'm well known for being poor at follow up. I've used a legal pad for years and years, and it's just been recently, in the last few months, that we've moved to a good follow up machine. We started using REI Black Book, and now every seller that's a pass right now, they go into a 6-month follow up where they get an email or a ringless voicemail or a text from us on a regular basis saying, hey, this is William. We're just following up with you. Talked to you a little while back about your house and was just wondering if maybe you're open to talking with us about buying it. So I expect that to really pay off.
Well, I guess we're all growing one day at a time, right?
That's right. Well, you're always learning. I mean, if you stay in this business, if you just keep learning and keep refining, I mean, that's why, the older guys that have been in this thing for a really long time, they have so much to offer because they've been doing it a long time. If they've been paying attention, they're continuously learning. They're learning better, faster, cheaper ways to do things. And they're, the people to listen to. I love I call the new gurus that got started last year, and now they're telling you all how to do this. There's one guy in particular, I don't call names, but he popped up about 6 months ago, and he's the king of Sub-2. I saw somebody that heard of him.
The king of Sub-2.
And he just showed up about 6 months ago that he knows all about it. So that's interesting. I like to read his advice from time to time. We'll see what happens. But anyway,
it's the 3 phases of understanding how to do something, right? Novice is you don't know what you don't know, then you know what you don't know, and then but you don't know, still don't know it, but you know what you don't know, and then you know it and you do it.
A lot of people getting started don't understand that they come to somebody to learn, and if you don't blow a lot of sunshine up their skirt right away, they're gone because they want to hear that it's all good, nothing ever goes bad, there's no risk involved, you don't need any money, it's easy money, it's the best thing in the world. They want to hear that. If they don't hear it, they're looking for somebody that'll tell them that. But there is some risk in what we do, and every day isn't a great day.
Well, let me share a story with you. When I was a financial advisor, I finally got to where I was making a lot of money. And I had more money coming in than apparently I had sense. Even though I was a smart guy, I had more money than I had sense at that moment. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to try some of these real estate transactions that I didn't have a whole lot of success with initially. And I want to try some sub-2 deals and some this and some that. And I said, but before I do, let me go out and I'm going to get a mentor. And I found this guy that had mentored me in wholesaling, and said, okay, well, you say you can do sub-2 as well. And so you let me go ahead and I'll hire you. And I joined his mastermind group. It was back in the 90s or the early 2000s when masterminds were everywhere. And that was kind of the thing. And, when you start looking at that, he said, join my mastermind group. And so I paid, I don't know, $10,000, $15,000 to join his mastermind group, and which, okay. But here was the kicker. I took his advice, but he didn't realize how intense I would go at marketing. And so I went out and I dropped $25,000 in marketing because I was ready to do some deals. And so I blanketed 4 counties around the DFW area. And I blanketed 4 counties around Phoenix because I had some contacts over there that could help me. And put it all together, and my phone started ringing off the hook. In my boardroom, I set up computers all the way around the table, and I had 6 sales guys that came in, and I gave them a script and told them exactly what to offer. And we were just spitting out offers, You're firing off the contract because, it was all about, the numbers and just firing them off. So we fired them off, got all these signed contracts back, and I had a stack. I kid you not. I probably had 50 or 100 deals within a few days. And when I say deals, these were signed contracts ready to go, make it happen. And I went, well, I know how to do the front end. I can get some deals in the door. I can get them signed. How do I close them? And so I picked up the phone and I called the mentor, and he said, well, what's going on? And I told him, I said, well, I got 50 deals here and I don't know how to close them. What do I do? And he said, you did what? You spent how much? You have what in front of you? And it was crickets. He said, well, let me get back to you. I never heard from that guy again. And I lost $50,000, which, that's a lot of money. I don't care who you are. That's a lot of money. And it was a very expensive mistake. But, all that to say, mentors matter. A good mentor is going to bring you a huge return, but a bad mentor can break your back. So make sure you're careful.
That's absolutely correct. So, yep, be careful who you listen to, for sure. Well, tell me, Joe. You're talking about this thing where you're getting all these leads and you're getting all these contracts. But today, now that you know a little bit more, what would you say is your best source for leads? I like to ask investors that I talk to, if your life depended on generating quality leads in the next 24 hours, you had to get out there and do something right away to make money. What would you invest your marketing in or spend your time doing to make those leads start coming in right away?
So, bar none, dollar for dollar return in my experience has been direct mail. Just going out. Now, I know there's lots of other ways, but for me, on a budget, I went out and I'd go out and I'd get a list, and I personally target people that or houses that are non-owner occupied. So I want somebody who doesn't live there, but owns the house, because they're a higher likelihood of needing to do something with that property. And so, if I'll give you an example, I did when in 2010, I lost my business. TARP came in, the whole world came to an end, and I lost my shirt, in a big way. Bigly, as it might have been said. And when you start looking at that, I had to start over. So I had to find a mentor, which I did. I had to find somebody who knew what they were going to help me with, which they did. I paid them a lot of money, but it left me a very little amount for marketing. And so I spent about $750 and sent out what's called a yellow letter. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And so, a yellow letter basically is just a legal pad, a yellow letter that you write on, and it's a handwritten note. And so you hand write the note so that it actually looks like it came from somebody, and then you mail it to the person, and they get it. And they were able to get it. It looked like a letter, looked like something powerful. And I can't say that this has happened every single time, but I've had as high as a 33% return on that kind of a letter. And so, and highly targeted. So if I were starting and I were trying to do something to where I needed to get something to happen, that is bar none where I would start.
Now, let me ask you this, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
Share the mail piece with us. What list is that mail piece going to? Is this something that you collect yourself? Is it something that you buy from a list service, or so who are you doing these mailings to? So
I've done both, but if we're talking about somebody starting and what's out there, I would say that one tip that I've learned that's pretty powerful, because I've bought really expensive lists and paid thousands of dollars for those lists, as I'm sure anybody who's been around for very long has. In Colorado, and I don't know about in other states, but in Colorado, you can actually go to the title company. And if you go to the title company, they will pull a list for you And so you can say, I want people in this zip code that have a valuation of between 300,000 and 800,000. And I want non-owner occupied, and you can give them all of your criteria and they'll pull the list for you. And I think here it costs like $5. It's ridiculous. And so you can get that list very, very easily imported into your program, Excel program or whatever, and print labels.
I know. I was shocked the title company here will give you. I mean, I think they just set you up on auto email and send you the list of the foreclosure notices. I mean, that's free.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you can get that. I mean, of course, here you can go to the county website and get them daily. What was filed each and every day. You think back to the times when like I got started, and I used to drive for dollars all week long, and then on Mondays I would go to the tax assessor's office and sit down at one of their computers and look each person up manually. 123 Oak Street, who's the owner, what's their address, and that sort of thing. We had to do that with some tedious stuff, and now you can just click a few times and get a list sent to you a lot of times for free. Amazing. That's they have it easy.
They don't even know it though.
That's for sure. It used to be tough in the old days, and then if you really had some money to drop, you could buy the CD from the tax assessor.
Right.
And you could have access at home. Of course, it only got updated once a year. So in the meantime, all the information was pretty old. But yeah, that's pretty cool. So
and I think that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge for a lot of people, is that they don't have to work as hard to get things, which is a really positive thing. So, I don't want that to sound negative. It's a really positive thing. The problem is that when it comes so easy, you don't realize that it's the right thing, because you're like, well, it can't be this easy. It can't be this simple. Everybody would do it. And so you don't put in the rest of the work, the follow-up, to be able to move forward.
I'll tell you, I've resisted some modern things for a long time. We just started in the last couple of weeks doing some texting. And I've been amazed at the response rate. When you used to direct mailing and things like that, bandit signs, magnetics on your car, some of the old school stuff, you start texting and you get these immediate responses. I mean, within seconds. It's really been an education.
Have you tried the ringless voicemails yet? I know there's some pros and cons to that.
I have not done that. The REI Black Book that we're using has a ringless voicemail feature that we will be using at some point. We haven't started that yet, but haven't done it. But I don't know. Texting's the same way, but everybody texts now. Ringless voicemail, I'm not sure, like I said, what kind of reception that's going to be. And a few of the texts have been less than welcoming of the responses. But the thing is, when you're getting a 30% response rate immediately, it's something that you send out 500 of them, and 150 people are responding within an hour, and not all of them are good. Most of them are stop or don't contact me or whatever. But I mean, just the fact that those people got it and they're responding to you, pretty impressive.
Where do you get that list? Where do you get your list on the text?
Well, right now we're texting FISBOs, so we're actually having a service spray Zillow for us, FISBOs, and we're working in 10 markets right now. So I mean, we're going to expand that to another 10 or 20 over the next month or so. That's pretty amazing that you can contact that many people. And the cost, I mean, if I mailed to 500 people, I'm looking at spending, a minimum of $300 or $400, counting the time, depending on the mailing piece. But you can text those same 500 people, for $10.
Yep.
I mean, really a lot less than that, but total cost by the time you factor in what percentage of that cost was paying the scraping service and then your actual texting and everything, $10 and an instantaneous 30% response. I'm blown away by that. That's what the new investors are using. So let's try and see. So far, so I mean, really, so far, like I said, we've only been doing it 2 weeks, and we've gotten, 2 yeses out of the ones we've sent out, we've gotten 2 people that agreed. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Okay, guys, we've covered a lot of stuff, Joe. A lot of good information. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Joe's going to tell us about his favorite tools that he uses in the business, to help make things easier. Find it. You guys, hang around, and we'll see you in just a second.
The Sub-2 Deals Show with your host, Sub-2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub-2ers, do you want to learn how to get the deed but need a little help getting started? Want to learn how to fill out the paperwork, how to use a land trust, how to market for deals, how to negotiate with sellers, and more? Join us in the Sub-2 Deals Facebook coaching group. Get the benefits of one-on-one coaching without the big price tag. Learn to do Sub-2 right with coaching in a group setting and mastermind format. Head over to sub2deals.com right now and click on consulting and group coaching. We'll save you a seat. Back to the show, the Sub-2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub-2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub-2ers, we are back with Joe. Joe is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He's kicking it in the high dollar market, doing some Sub-2s and making some money. So he's been sharing a lot of information with us, how his favorite targets for leads, and how he does business. When we left, he was just about to tell us about his favorite tools that he uses in his business. So, Joe, what's your secret weapon? What do you use that makes your life easier and makes it easier for you to find deals and make money?
Well, I think I kind of hit on one of the tools a moment ago, just as far as going out and getting the list from your title company or wherever. But I actually don't use a whole lot of the fancy tools out there. I guess I'm old school. Like you mentioned a minute ago, I haven't embraced some of the newer things that are available. With that said, I'm kind of old school. I go out and I want to build relationships. And for me, it's a relationship game. And the biggest tool I feel like we have is mindset. And so when you start thinking about perspective, so many people get bogged down in, well, what tool do I need? And I can't do anything until I get this or I get that. And I kind of grew up in this thing over the past 20 years in a market that you just got to go out and do it. You just do it. And Nike made it popular back in the day, but it really is something that you just have to go out and grind. And for me, in doing that, the mindset shift has been to focus on relationships, and that's a big tool.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, I still, teach old school stuff. People say, well, cold calling doesn't work. Listen, how many, thousands and thousands of people cold call in their business every day? It obviously still works. Same thing with bandit signs. Bandit signs don't work anymore. But I'm telling you, even in a market like the one that we both live in Colorado Springs, there are bandit signs everywhere. And those guys aren't putting them out for their health. They're getting calls. Just making contact with people and you know what you do. That absolutely is. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. Well, and I've tried the bandit signs and different things. I personally haven't. I know guys that have, but I personally haven't had a whole lot of success with it. But the things that I have had success with is increasing conversions. And so, I find that when I'm dealing with a client, if I can sit down and first of all, connect with them and just connect with who they are as a person. And then I'm able to go in and try and solve their problem. And if it's a win-win for both of us, then and that's how, I'm able to convert. And that's a big focus for me from a tool standpoint, just going in and building that relationship, valuing the other person. And if you can value their situation and who they are, I would say that's probably the biggest tool I have.
Okay. Well, tell us about how you decide that you're interested in a deal. What are your criteria when you evaluate one? Somebody calls you from a lead generator, a mailing, or whatever it is that you do, and they have a deal for you. What makes the difference for you when you get the numbers, when you decide it's something that you want to do?
So for me, I actually have gotten to a place to where I get calls from all over the country. And, one of the challenges with that is that, every time you go into a new market, you know what that's like. You go into a new market, you got to build a whole new team, and you have to, find people to do this and that and the other. And so it's really, the first thing for me is it in a market that I'm already in? Is it in a market that I am doing? And even more than a market, is it in an area that I understand and that I know? When I first started, I mentioned earlier in our time here that I made a mistake. I went out and I blasted DFW. I blasted Phoenix. I was in markets I had no idea what they were. No idea. And so, now for me to decipher between things, it comes down to the numbers I told you. Does it fit my numbers? If it fits the numbers, we're in good shape. If it doesn't fit the numbers, there's probably somebody else that may take a look at it, but it's not me. And, I am going to focus on a deal that's a deal and not try to get a deal just to have a deal. And, I think that's how I filter a transaction: location, and is it in my wheelhouse? If it's not in my wheelhouse, then I'm probably going to either wholesale it to somebody else or shift it someplace else.
Okay. Well, can you tell us, give us an example of a deal that you're working on right now?
Well, right now I am sitting on cash. I am just watching the market, watching what's going on in our market here in Colorado Springs. The overall market is still pretty hot. There's still a lot of transactions happening, and the prices are going up. And I'm just not convinced that's going to continue. And until I have a good gut, I may be completely wrong, right? I could totally miss it, but in my mind, it's going to go one of two directions. It's either going to soften a little bit and I'm going to have a better opportunity, or it's just going to completely take off as inflation kicks in. And either way, I'm going to be in a good shape as long as I have my cash in hand. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, and I know some investors who are like that. They're like, I'm just waiting it out right now. And, they're in a position where they can do that. And that's great. I've been a lot more cautious myself. I mean, we still, pursue deals and are going after stuff, but, we're just a little bit more cautious because I'm telling you, with what all's happening in the market right now, it's just crazy. I mean, I know, like I said, we work in the same market here, and the agent that we work with, last update she gave us on inventory, in a city this size, and there were just a little over 300 houses on the MLS.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And people that bought a house, last year and paid full price are able to sell it this year, pay agents commissions, and put money in their pocket. It's crazy.
Well, we could go into all kinds of detail of indicators and different things that we're trying to process, but the truth is it's all a guessing game. And nobody knows. If we did, then we would be a lot wealthier than we are. And and so I think for me, where I'm at this point is cash flow is king. And after you make enough mistakes over time and you have enough challenges in life and experience, you recognize that sometimes that's the place you need to be. Now, if I were starting today and I was just, trying to get going, man, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd just go out because you got nothing to lose, right? You're just going to go for it. And so if that's where I was, I would not be making the same decision. So I think that's probably another thing that would be important for people listening is just because you hear somebody say they're doing one thing, whether that's going all in or holding back and looking at cash. Well, if you don't have a bunch of cash on hand, then, it is what it is. Go with what you have, go with your strengths. But for me, that's where I'm at.
Well, tell us about your most unusual deal, the one with the most difficult circumstances or the most moving parts. I ask this question of everybody that's on our Real Investor series, and I'll tell you, I love it because I hear the most amazing things. I've heard of murder for hire plots and just all kinds of things. So, but tell us about your most unusual deal.
Well, you gave me a list of questions before we got on here. And this was one of them that you asked me. And, honestly, I could think of a million different transactions. We could just go back and forth where we talk about all kinds of crazy things that have happened, but I tried to think of one that might be helpful. And, I sent out one of these mailers a number of years ago. And so I give this story as an encouragement to people that maybe are just getting started. It was my first mailing in 2012. And I didn't have any money. I mean, I literally, Bill, when I say I was out of money, I was out of money, my friend. I was all in, ALL, all. I had put everything in mentoring, everything in coaching, and now I had just a little bit of money for marketing, but I didn't even really have any money for closing. I didn't know how I was going to pull this off. And so I went out and I sent out the mailer, and I got a 33% response. So I sent out 750 pieces, got 250 responses. And, that may be a quality problem for some. And in a big picture, that's a quality problem to have too many leads. But in my world, that crushed me. And I felt just completely bogged down. And I sat there and I talked to my mentor at the time and said, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, just call back the ones you like. If you call back, and if they say they're not interested, you just hang up and go on to the next one. Don't waste any time with them. You got more leads than you have opportunity to get to everybody. So just do what you can. And I got a hold of one guy that had he was a former, or he owned kind of a dental type of a practice. And he had this property that was kind of beat up and wasn't a great property. It was probably worth about, I don't know. I think at the time it was worth about $300,000 here in the area. And it was tired. It was tired, my friend, but it had about $90,000 of equity in it. So it had some money to work with there. And so I said, well, I'll probably can make this one work. And so we start talking about it, and he's obviously stressed. And I'm like, why are you so stressed about this one deal? He said, well, I don't know. I got other properties. Really? You got other properties? He said, yeah, but you wouldn't be interested in those. They're bad. They got a bad problem. What's their problem? He said, well, I've got tenants in both of them. And so, they're kind of breaking even on the amount I'm paying, but, they're upside down as far as the equity of them. And, they're, one of them's a little over $1 million and the other one's about $1 million. And, it ended up, after all was said and done, there were 4 properties and it was about $3 million of real estate. And 3 of them were completely maxed out. So I told you my model was 90%. We weren't at 90%. But he was willing to just sign them over. So, that's a different model, right? That's more of a straight sub-2 model. And then he had the other property. Well, the other property had a first and a second, or a first but no second. And there was nothing there. And so what I did is instead of doing a mirror wrap on that transaction, I did a wrap overall, but I actually reduced the interest on the property to where it was the payment reflected just the payment to finish out the first mortgage. So the way it worked would basically be, I'm going to finish paying your first mortgage, and then all the payments after that would come to you, and then you'd get paid off down the road sometime. The same time, I took a mirror wrap on the others, and they had negative amortization payments. But because I had the deal itself, there were tenants in both properties. And he told me in the meeting, both tenants have asked him to owner finance the property. And I walked through the whole process. I told him, well, let me just tell you, if you sell it to me, I'm going to owner finance it to them. So you're going to owner finance it to me. I'm going to wrap that transaction and sell it to them. And he looked at me and he said, well, then why should I sell it to you? I said, well, I know how to do it. Do you? He said, no, you do it. And he handed me that transaction. He then wrote me a check at closing for all of their earnest money, their deposits for all of their rentals. I then went and negotiated with all three of them to purchase the property. And so they then turned around and gave me a down payment. And within about 30 days, we had turned around and flipped it all to them. Made hundreds of thousands of dollars on those transactions and went from zero to feeling pretty good. So it can be done. It happens every single day. And, I'm proof of it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, man, that's amazing stuff there. How did you learn to do what you do?
Well, I keep growing, right? I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but I've spent a lot of money in education. I've made some mistakes, and I've learned through that time. I spent a number of years as a high net worth financial advisor where I would help multi-millionaires navigate through transactions. I think the big thing that you can look at is recognizing there's always an opportunity. Where is it? And, how are we going to find that opportunity and look at things through different lenses and talk to different people and strategize? Don't get hung up on one thing. So that's been something that I pride myself in. And now, I just enjoy helping other people identify that as well.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe. If you could give new investors wanting to get started any advice, what would that be?
Don't quit. I think that more times than not, people quit when it gets hard. And either when it gets hard or when they fail. Failure is inevitable. There's always going to be failure. But the only time that you truly fail is when you just give up. And, otherwise you can fail forward. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing would be find a good mentor. I think you're in a good place here right now. And, William, you didn't ask me to do this, but I'm gonna go ahead and pump you up, my friend. You're a good dude. I watch you from the outside, and I see your students really thriving, and the energy that doesn't happen when you're doing things wrong. And so you're in a good place. If you're new and you're listening to this, dig in and talk to William. One thing I always appreciate about him is that he doesn't have a scarcity mindset. If there's someplace else that's a good fit for you, he'll tell you. If there's somebody else that can help you in a transaction, he'll tell you. And, I think that speaks a lot to who he is. So, I would say mentors are more than important. If you can spend some money, and I have no idea what your coaching programs or anything cost, Bill. I have no idea, but if you can, if you're in a place to where you have any money at all, that would be a good place to start. Find somebody that can help you, because they can save you so much time and money. They've just been there. So I think those are the two things I would tell people is don't quit and get somebody that can help you.
Well, Joe, I appreciate that. I know we appreciate you contributing in the forum, and you've been a member there, I think, since right after I started it a year and a half ago or something like that. And I appreciate all the help that you give the people in there. And I know you and I talked about a venture that you're starting up now to help. You want to tell us about that and how anybody listening can get in touch with you and find out more about it?
Sure. Well, I am passionate about helping people. And, over the years, it's been a situation where I've been blessed to have some opportunities and to see things. And, you asked a second ago, Bill, how did I learn these things? Well, it takes experience. So, you have to either go out and find the experience and have the experience yourself. Or you can create the associations and you can identify the people that you can help with. And that's where I'm at. So, I run a company called Middle Class Millionaire. We help people in financial stewardship. I'm heavily faith focused. And so that doesn't mean that if you have a different faith or you don't believe in faith, that you're not a fit for what I do. But, for me, I see a lot of really bad teaching out there, a lot of really bad advising. And so it's one of the things I really appreciate about William is that, he digs in. And even when I see people in his forum ask or give some bad advice, he digs in and kind of says, well, tell me more about that. You can watch some of the subtleties to how he addresses that and say, tell me more about that. Explain to me how that works, because he'll let them go ahead and expose themselves as far as where they're at. And, I find that right now there's just a lot of really bad advice, and I take more of a holistic approach, way bigger than just a sub-2 approach in what I do. But sub-2 is something that I feel like is a very, very valuable tool if you're looking to get on the right track and focus on something that's going to make you some money. You're in the right place.
Well, Joe, tell everybody how to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your middle class millionaire.
Sure. They can go to my website. It's joesugg.com, just my name.com, or they can find me on a lot of social media places, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever. joesuggmcm.com, MCM, middle class millionaire. And so either of those places, jump in, and I'd love to hear from you, love to encourage you, and honestly just love to hear how I can support you and help you.
Yeah, well, great. Okay, so everybody, make sure you visit Joe at joesugg.com or joesuggmcm.com. Sounds like a great program. So thanks for sharing that with us. And Joe, we appreciate you being here and spending the time with us, busy guy like you, taking an hour out to talk to us. I know that's tough, and we do appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to you coming over and playing some pool with me again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got to do that. So great. Looking forward to it. Well, Sub-Tours, that's it for this episode of the Sub-2 Deal Show podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, and it helps other investors discover the show. You can subscribe as well as leave a rating and review by visiting Apple Podcasts and just do a quick search for the Sub-2 Deal Show. It'd also be great if you consider sharing our podcast with a fellow real estate investor who you might think would benefit from it. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will buy some houses.